You know, sometimes a story is about so much more than what's on the surface. This is one of those stories. It's about a sacred promise to protect the land, a community that found itself completely divided, and a real fight for its very soul. It's about what happens when ancient traditions crash head-on with modern power structures, and how a community refused to be silenced. Just think about this question for a second. It was asked by a young leader at a tribal gathering, and wow, it just cuts right to the heart of everything we're talking about. It really sets the stage for the enormous stakes in the battle over the Dome Valley landfill. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with a sacred act of unity, and then see how that unity was betrayed. We're going to look at the playbook used to sideline a community's voice, the two completely different worlds of law that collided, and finally, the community's powerful response. Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story kicks off with a totally unified community. They were facing this threat of a massive landfill right in their valley, and they came together to use an ancient and incredibly powerful form of protection. Now, to really get what's going on, we have to understand this concept of a rahui. This is so much more than just a protest sign. It is a living, breathing expression of tribal law. It's a sacred ban, put in place by elders to protect the spiritual life force, the muri, of the land and the water. This was a crystal clear collective signal. This place is off limits. It's protected. Yeah, but here's where the story takes a turn. That powerful, unified front, well, it started to crumble. And the thing is, the opposition wasn't weakened by some outside force. No, the fracture came from inside the tribe itself. Let's just trace how this unfolded. It all starts with unity, right? The Rahi in 2019. But then things start to change. By 2022 and then into 2025, the official tribal governance bodies, these are called post-settlement governments entities, or PSGs, they suddenly started withdrawing their opposition. And get this, they did it even after the elders had doubled down and banned all landfills in the area. This all led to a crisis meeting, a massive tribal gathering, which those very same entities then refused to even show up to. And this quote from the co-chair of that gathering, Mikehira Miru, it just says it all. He doesn't see their boycott as just some disagreement. He calls it a serious breach of tikanga, a breach of customary law, and said these entities were making deals behind closed doors. So you see, this stopped being just about a landfill. It became a full-blown crisis of governance. So you have to be asking, how did this community feel so completely ignored? To understand that, we need to pull back the curtain and look at two really important ideas that explain what happens when consultation is just an empty word. So this is the ideal, right? What's supposed to happen. It's called meaningful consultation. The key words there are two-way dialogue and potential to influence. It's meant to be a real conversation where the community actually has a say, where the ending hasn't already been written. But what the community felt they got was this: consultation theater. This is when the whole process is basically just for show. You know, the meetings are held, the boxes get ticked, but the really big decisions, oh, they've already been made behind the scenes. Community input becomes noise that doesn't actually change a thing. And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote, pulled right from the minutes of that tribal gathering, nails it. The so-called consultation happened after the decision to pull their opposition was made. It wasn't a dialogue, it was just an announcement. The other big idea here is something called rahui displacement. A rahui, remember, isn't just a ban. It's a deep cultural call for everyone to stop, to come to the table, and to talk. But instead of that essential dialogue, the response was to bury the whole thing in paperwork and process. They basically swapped out cultural authority for bureaucratic procedure. And this is exactly what that displacement looks like in the real world. Instead of showing up for face-to-face dialogue, the PSGEs offered up online video explainers and Q&A webinars. It's a classic case of information becoming a cheap substitute for a real relationship. They were talking at the community, not with them. And that is Rahi displacement in action. Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, you have to understand that this isn't just some simple disagreement. This is a fundamental clash between two completely different systems of law, of authority, of seeing the world. So on one side, you have the traditional Marai-based tikanga. Here, authority flows up from the people. Decisions are made together by consensus. It's all about relationships and dialogue. But on the other side, you have these PSGEs. They are corporate structures born out of Crown settlements. They operate under Western trust law, and their primary focus is managing assets. Two totally different worlds. And here's the legal detail that makes all the difference. Most of these PSGEs are set up as discretionary trusts. What that means is that the tribal members, the actual beneficiaries, don't have fixed ownership rights. They only have a right to be considered. This legal structure hands an immense amount of power to a very small group of trustees, who can make huge decisions without needing a direct mandate from their own people.
Which brings us right back to that huge tribal gathering in November 2025. Their own governance bodies had boycotted them, so the people gathered to take back their voice and to respond to what they saw as a deep, painful betrayal of both trust and their culture.
This powerful proverb, a wakatauki, was shared by the revered elder Dame Nida Glavish, and it just perfectly captured the mood in that room. It wasn't just a choice to act, it was a moral duty. She went on to say that shame should be the punishment for those who bypass the marae and disrespect their own customs.
And they didn't just talk, they took real action. The gathering passed clear, strong resolutions. First, they reaffirmed the sacred Rahui, declaring it to be the true living law of the tribe. Second, they called out the hypocrisy of a local environmental group that was up for a global prize while staying silent on this massive threat in their own backyard. And then, in a truly dramatic move, one mare announced it was formally withdrawing from its PSGE in protest.
You see, in the end, this fight was never just about a landfill. It was a battle to protect the Maui, the very life force of their land and water. But it became something even bigger, a fight to defend the authority of their own laws, their own culture, in the face of these corporate structures that had been imposed on them.
And all of this leaves us with a huge question, one that goes way beyond Dome Valley. When an ancient law, built on collective wisdom to protect the earth, collides with modern bureaucracy, designed to manage assets, who really has the authority to speak for and to protect our future?